Hi, everyone, and welcome to my talk, Software Managers Focus on What's Important. My name is Kalmanovich. I'm an engineering manager at Booking.com. I live in Amsterdam with my husband Oron and our baby Lily. I have a technology podcast called Balvas Gumi, Rubber Duck in Hebrew, and when I'm not working, I'm probably watching a musical. And today, I'd like to share with you my view on finding the right engineering focus for every stage of the product we're building. As an engineering manager, are you familiar with the next scenario? Your product manager storms into your office with 20 feature requests that are all, of course, top priority, while customer success tags you on Slack 3 times a day about user bugs in your system. And in the meantime, you're late for a design review where your team members propose a major architectural change because the product will not scale to the predicted influx of new users. Is that somewhat familiar? Our hectic day-to-day is the reason for this talk. I'd like to share with you how I make order out of this mess. I'm going to talk about finding the right focus to get our team to deliver maximum value. So on the agenda today, we'll talk about focus in the proof of concept phase, focus in the maturing and scaling up phase, and exactly where our people's focus comes in. Let's start with focus in the proof of concept phase. In this section, I'll cover these 3 topics which allow us to focus better. What are the POC's impact areas? Who are the users and what's missing for them today? And what goals do we aim to achieve with this POC? To me, the first question we must ask ourselves is, how do we get the maximum value from this POC? This is a question with many different answers. The engineering will have one answer for it. The product managers will probably have a whole different answer. The sales team will definitely see things differently. We as engineering managers strive to build our products in the best way possible, so we need to be the ones who understand every department's vision. And that's our way of knowing where to push to get to maximum value. This is not an easy task. There's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. A few years ago, I was leading a software group which was focused mainly on maintaining a very complex legacy system. When I started out, I had conversations with everyone about the projects and the day-to-day and the pains. Our product was supposed to manage the current status of all the engines on a ship. One of the pains I encountered was there was no way of using the product to accurately identify when an engine would break. The system would use rule-based algorithms to identify the breaking of an engine. I realized that by using data and introducing data-driven decisions into the system, instead of using rule-based algorithms, we would be able to predict the engine braking more accurately. Correctly predicting the braking of the engine was a huge pain that I wanted to solve. But to see if we could actually solve it and to test my hypothesis, I started with a POC. So introducing data and data-driven decisions into our system, it could not only solve this one particular problem that we were facing with the engine's health, but it could solve so many other problems within the system. Naturally, we could take this product to a million different directions. But we didn't really have the capacity to do whatever we wanted. So we asked ourselves several questions to focus and get the maximum value of this POC. Who are our users? Seems like an easy enough question, but we were trying to build a new system. We had to consider it might be valuable for other users as well. Will additional users benefit from the system once it will be data-driven? Probably. How do these users use or abuse the system they currently have? Because, guys, let's face it, there's one universal truth, and it is that customers or users, they will always find a way to abuse your system in a way that you never even imagined possible. What pains do the users feel when they're using the current system? What is missing for them that they're not getting from any other product? And 2 very important questions, in my opinion. How hard will it be to introduce other important abilities to this POC once we start maturing it into a product? And also, how easy will it be to add new abilities once we start maturing this POC into a full-scale product? Out of these critical questions, we were able to map out potential focus areas in order to build our POC for maximum value. And then we asked ourselves a question that helped us choose between the potential focus areas that we mapped out. What is the goal of the POC? And to us, we had 2 main goals. The first goal was to show our potential users our suggested solution is better for them and produces much more value than the one they currently use, so they will eventually buy this product from us. And the second thing that we wanted to get out of this was to take ownership over additional impact areas, which will expand the group's reach and make it more valuable for this organization. Our focus was to provide a maximum impact POC. We went with the pains and deficits the users were already feeling today and gave them something that will help them increase engagement and make them want to stick to our product. But remember, there's always a trade-off. Especially when it comes to POCs. There's never enough capacity to do everything. Not enough time, not enough people, too many possible features, right? You get the trade-offs, and everywhere we have them, no matter what stage we're in. And eventually what we get, it's not a product, right, when we're working on a POC. We need to pinpoint what we can get from this POC and also understand what we aim to achieve from the product we will eventually build. For example, if I were to POC the Booking.com app 10 years ago, I would focus on probably booking a hotel instead of booking a taxi from the airport. Why? Because there were a lot of impact areas, I'm sure, 10 years ago. But the impact back then lied with booking hotels rather than with booking taxis. The users could get the most impact out of the app when they were trying to book a hotel, and the product goal was to become the #1 app for hotel bookings worldwide, not for booking taxis from airport. Now, the situation is different. Booking.com is an empire and has a holistic solution for the connected trip from the moment I leave my home until I get to the country I plan to travel to, and throughout the entire planning of my trip. So without focusing on the area with most impact, this POC, had it happened 10 years ago, could have been a total mess. So we want to answer questions in order to understand our focus areas and where to put our impact. But what happens when we answer the questions, but they're the wrong questions? You're probably all familiar with HBO's TV show Silicon Valley. I'm sorry for spoilers, but it's old enough, so watch it if you haven't seen it yet. It's very good. The engineering team on Silicon Valley builds this incredible app, and they want to beta test it to understand its value to the users. Naturally, who do you send your betas to? Of course, you send them to your friends, and that's exactly what they did. They sent their beta to their friends, and all their friends came back with this amazing feedback. But when they launched the app, they experienced a completely different reaction. Users don't stick. They eventually understand that all their friends who tested the beta were engineers just like them and were expecting a certain user interface. But the users they were aiming for were expecting something completely different. If they had asked themselves who are our potential users and what is missing for them or how they plan to use the system, they might have been aware that their user interface was too complicated for their actual users. So they answered some questions, but these were not the right questions to predict if their POC will be successful. So how can we make sure this doesn't happen to us? It doesn't matter if we're building a product and it's in its proof of concept phase or continuous development, continuous rollout, maintenance stage, throughout all the product stages. Every stage we'll be in and we would like to develop something, we must first ask ourselves why. We need to ask the product manager, the sales team, and anyone else who can provide the important context, all stakeholders. Dear product manager, why is this feature needed? Does it solve a pain? Dear sales team, why should we develop it now? Dear executive, what organizational goal would this feature development achieve? So we as engineering managers will be able to answer the important question of why should we put precious engineering resources on this development of all possible developments. As managers, challenging decisions helps us better understand the product's goals and vision and end game that we should strive for. It helps us better understand how to assign our team members to work on the most valuable things, as on the one hand, we should be the ones who understand our people best, and on the other hand, we want to hold the broad context so we see the big picture, understand where the biggest impact lies, and this way we allow more focused delivery, which can lead to larger accomplishments. In the group I led, we went with the pains. We answered pains which were mapped out to be mutual pains for a few different types of users. We built a concise POC that answers the mutual pains for said users. And the product that began as a POC grew to become the group's most impactful product, as it also introduced our path to growth. Which leads us to the second part: how to build for success. How to mature and scale our product. In this section, we'll discuss finding the right focus when maturing and scaling our products. We'll talk about investing in building trust, planning for success, delays, and failure, and the importance of pivoting. When we work on a POC, we need a lot of things to happen in a very short period of time. When we get the okay, this product could be great, we want to sell it, this next stage could also benefit from a similar mapping process. Mapping the pain areas to understand where the most meaningful impact lies helps when we scale up the product and want to add new features, because naturally we, again, don't have all the resources that we want. We don't have all the people, and we don't have all the money, and we don't have everything that we need in order to do everything all at once. When we scale up the product, and this product suddenly needs to be a real product, we should plan the main milestones we aim to achieve, the features and tasks timelines, what should precede what, in order to help us understand priorities also, and dependencies, what depends on what. For example, if I finish the whole part A of my product, but then I can't even begin to start working on part B because I depend on a different team. So I should know that in advance in order for them to start working on the parts that I depend on in order for me to proceed with my product. And of course, which are our low-hanging fruit and our quick wins as opposed to the long-term efforts. We know that long-term efforts should be reflected to our stakeholders, but sometimes it's more important to reflect the small successes to build trust. Showing a product manager or other relevant stakeholders how we solve a certain pain for the user will ultimately show what the engineers actually deliver. The more successes and day-to-day efforts we reflect, the more trust our stakeholders will have that we know how to deliver. You've reached a milestone. Share a Slack message. Your team launched a new feature. Bring a cake to the office. Eventually, sharing successes will become a part of your culture, and it will be a driving engine for maturing your product. And also, it's really fun for us engineers. It's important to feel appreciated. When we reflect our long-term efforts, it's best to understand how and when to negotiate in order to achieve our goals. For example, I would probably request one sprint for infrastructure work and offer a whole sprint for new feature development in return. Or maybe say to my product manager, let's spend half a sprint of uninterrupted efforts on an infra pain, and then I can offer these 3 small feature development that could bring this and that value to the users. It's important to understand that balancing infrastructure with building new features isn't just a nice to have. It's the basis for velocity. If you balance well, your velocity will grow. One of the most important things we need to learn is how to reflect and push the technical efforts to our stakeholders. They don't speak engineering fluently, and this effort is a must. Technical reflection to non-technical stakeholders is not just a bonus, it's a major part of our job. What else is important? Don't forget to celebrate your important milestones along the way. Growing a product is hard, and it can take a while. And you should always allow your team to feel their achievements. They should feel their achievements and that they're appreciated along the way. What happens when you don't plan? Well, you'll probably find yourself in a constant battle to put out fires. When we keep running to put out fire after fire, we will never be able to focus on progress. We will never find available capacity for growth. Putting out fires is super important. But when the product scales up in users or data or any other area, building infrastructure and investing in growth is mission critical. How do you do that? How do we make sure our POC can grow, become a stable and reliable system that produces value at scale? We talk about the how. We talk about the how with our team. We talk about how we plan to bring the maximum impact to make this product the very best there is. We talk to our engineering team in terms of impact in order to connect them to the product vision, to the domain, to the user pains, and to the overall organizational goals. We talk with our managers and relevant stakeholders about how we plan to get there, how we plan to bring more value than we bring today. Use as many numbers as possible to back up your words. Sharing how we plan to proceed with our stakeholders is a critical stage, which will set the table for sharing progress along the way, possible changes in velocity, and overall aligns everyone on the expected delivery. And I think that's the most important part. We talk to ourselves about choosing a path and making sure that it's the right path we take. We look at the context, we look at the big picture we hold, and we make sure we agree with ourselves that we're 100% on board with taking this direction, that we believe this road is the best to travel. Trust our instincts and validate along the way. Checking in with ourselves on every milestone that we're still on the right path and we believe in proceeding will allow us to make sure we're indeed on track. We don't want to find ourselves in 1 year knee-deep in a project that is no longer relevant, as the whole reality of the organization and organizational goals have changed around us, right? Or that it took longer than planned and new players got to market with their product faster than we did. Or that in hindsight, most of the efforts we put were wrong and didn't get us to beat the competition to market. So validating ourselves on every milestone that we still believe in the road we took is really important. But keep in mind, planning is awesome, but reality can make things a bit more challenging. Planning for delays and for failure is critical. In one of my previous roles, we had a backend service which was responsible for handling all the data we were using. It served all purposes at once. It was collecting and cleaning and processing all the data. Since it was definitely not a single responsibility unit, it had many bugs, and it took very long to spot the issues. We decided to split this one massive service into smaller single responsibility units. The thought itself was excellent, and it was exactly what needed to be done. But along the way, we discovered we've fallen into several pitfalls. Like the great engineers we were, what was the first thing that we said we would do? Of course, build everything from scratch. Another pitfall that we fell into, we started making several major changes all at once. We started out with single responsibility units, but as development progressed, we inadvertently added additional responsibilities and coupled between the units. We thought it would be a good idea to introduce microservices and queues all at once. You get the point. The project was planned with minimum room for delays, which wasn't the right thing for our timeline. We handled many more unexpected issues than planned and eventually needed to rethink the entire thing because the reality changed around us. These things happen. The important thing to keep in mind is we can always pivot and nothing is a done deal. Maybe next time we won't make all changes at once. Maybe next time we'll work in smaller iterations to get to successful checkpoints. There are many learnings from failure. The important thing is it helps us plan for future endeavors so much better. Planning for growth is important. Equally important is planning for delays. We can plan really well, but how would you handle a situation I had to face in one of my previous roles? We were about to launch a state-of-the-art solution that would provide the company a foot in the door for selling products from a whole new vertical. The engineering teams were on track to what they believed was a reasonable timeline, but our product manager did not see the exact same picture we did. The engineering teams did not get the reflection of the correct sense of urgency for some features, in addition to the entire timeline miscommunication. The reflection needed to come from both sides. Our product manager needed to reflect what the need was and how urgent it was, and the engineering teams needed to reflect what the exact state of the development was. We learned from this experience how critical it is that both sides raise flags if something is not clear on each side. The miscommunication led to us having conversations about cutting losses and deciding on what's worse, to launch a half-baked product and lose the great promise of the intended launch, or accept that if we launch on time, the product will not bring value to users, so we should postpone the launch. Either way, we needed to make a difficult decision and face the consequences of miscommunication. We could have avoided making these hard decisions and facing these severe consequences if we had identified we had a problem with misunderstanding priorities and sense of urgency along the way, raised the flag that there might be a delay, and planned ahead to handle this delay. There will almost always be delays. We should plan our way around them and communicate them properly. However, our timelines change, and whether we fail or have delays with our delivery, we have to be brave enough to pivot. Did we choose one path and things changed along the way? You need to change to a different path. You're a leader. Steer the ship to the right direction. Our focus as managers should be divided between the technical focus and focusing on our people. So far, we've seen how to focus our engineering, but what about our engineers? When we understand our people in the best way possible, we can increase the velocity and the predictability of our delivery. In this section, we'll discuss investing in getting to know your team members, building growth plans, and how mental health is key for everything. When we looked for the focus within the technical aspects, we started with mapping impact areas. When we aim to find the right focus for our people, what should we map? When I enter a new team, I start with mapping just about whatever I can. The pains of each developer on my team, my developers' passions, what connects between some team members, what alienates other team members from each other. And I can't forget that when we're talking about our team members, we're talking about human beings. And if we don't protect them, they'll burn. I don't know if many of you are familiar with this TV show, Ted Lasso, but it's a very good one, at least the first 2 seasons. I haven't seen the third one yet. So Ted Lasso manages a soccer team. Many things are happening in his life all at once, and as we don't know when it will be a bit too much for us, he also did not know that some things happened all at once and it was a little bit too much to handle for him, and he had to handle the effects of burnout. It doesn't help our developers to work in an environment where everything is urgent, everything is P0, everything needs to happen ASAP. Let's help our developers, just like Ted Lasso got help in season 2, just saying, it's not really a spoiler. So let's help our developers by facilitating a healthy environment that allows continuous growth over time instead of a fast burning rate. This is also true about us managers. Our day-to-day is stressful and expectations from us are always very high. We need to find those regeneration points for ourselves to allow ourselves to build from the high expectations and not get swallowed by the stress. So in order to deliver better, we need to tune into our growth mindset. We have to find the right focus both in the technical aspects and people management aspects of our work. Once I complete the first step of mapping my team members' passions, strengths, and all other attributes, I move on to the second phase of building a growth plan. The way I see it, managers should invest in building a growth plan for every developer. It could have so many benefits. For one, assigning tasks will be more clear as there is a clear baseline to look at. Another benefit could be retention. Our developers will feel they're growing and evolving professionally. I think about a year from now, and I want to understand what my engineers' technical growth trajectory is. What initiatives they'll work on. What verticals will they lead? This comes hand in hand with understanding where the team is going in a year from now, what initiatives I want us to use to push as a team, what verticals we lead as a team. This is really interesting work, planning the balance between the work that needs to be done with each of the engineers' growth plans. Balancing good teamwork to keep the work going with personal and professional growth to get exponential growth and velocity. To allow good teamwork, I try to get to the bottom of each team member's workflow and how they connect with other team members. What's this engineer's favorite method of work? Are they used to working alone or as a part of the team? How do they prefer communicating with each other and with other team members? Every person has their own favorite method of work. Finding them will make it easier to understand this person and how to best work with them. To allow growth, I think about what motivates each engineer and my team as a whole. What kind of features will this engineer enjoy developing? What initiatives they might be passionate about and should lead? How will this bring more value than if another team member leads this initiative? And motivating the team as a whole, I will try to see if there's some way for me to connect between the team members. For example, if two people who could work well together would lead two connected tasks, could their personal connection move both tasks forward faster and better? To sum up, getting to know my people and their passions is not a nice to have. It's what helps me push my technical roadmap a million steps ahead. I invest in building growth plans. They help me get more done and in the long run could help retention. I always align with my engineers on their growth plan so we both make sure we run in the same direction. And I keep an eye out for burnout. I want my teams to be happy. So today we talked about combining the technical focus with personal focus to grow your team's velocity. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter and make sure you check out my podcast Barvas Gumi. Thank you for listening and have an awesome Pi Day.